Welcome back to the second installment of this 7-part series on how you can get your podcast started in less than 7 days. Now, we talked about the benefits of making a podcast in the last video, and if you want to check that out, it's going to be in the playlist, which is going to be either on this side or this side. I don't even really know, but what I do know is that please remember to hit that subscribe button right over here because I'm going to be making more beginner tutorials and a few other niches that I am passionate in. And speaking of niches, that's going to be the topic of this video, and it is finding your niche for your podcast. Now, you can have the best camera in the world, you can even have the best microphone in the world, and you can even have the best software, but you know what? If you don't have an audience, there is absolutely no point of you even doing a podcast if you don't even have an audience. It's almost like you're talking to no one, or no one's even watching you. So in order to start getting an audience, you need to find the niche on where your podcast is going to be focused on. So that's going to be the first step. So the first step of finding your niche is going to be what you are interested in. Now, this is something that is almost kind of common sense, but some people just don't get it. Some people go into a podcast thinking like, hey, I can talk about this topic because it's super popular for today, and then they end up failing because it's not what they're passionate about. If put yourself in the shoes of a potential listener. Are they going to want to listen to someone who isn't interested in what they're talking about? Like, why would they be interested in listening or watching if you're not even passionate about what you are saying? So that's the first step, is finding your niche and what you are interested in. Talk about things that you might find interesting. You can either, and what I mean by that is that you can be interested in sports, so talk about sports, or you can be interested in technology, so talk about technology. Or if you like sports, don't talk about technology, and if you like technology, don't talk about sports. Kind of common sense on that. So that's the first step. In order to find your niche is to find what you are interested in. The second step of finding your niche is to niche down. And what do I mean by that? So niching down. So the two previous topics that I mentioned was sports and technology. So niching down after finding out what you're interested in. So say I am interested in sports. Okay, that's great. But sports is a huge topic, and there's a variety of different things that you can go into with sports. If you're just going to make a sports podcast, you're not going to get that many people to tune in because it's not specific enough. That is what I mean by niche down, is being as specific as possible. So let's niche down from sports. So there's sports, and then say, oh, I'm going to talk about soccer. So that's great. So you niche down from sports to soccer. That is your first step of niching down. So sports, then soccer, and like, hey, soccer is great, so I'm just going to do a podcast on soccer. That could work, but you know what? Soccer is also a huge topic, and there's a lot of competition for people that talk about soccer. So you may even want to niche down further than that. And what I mean by that is you can start talking about sports, and then soccer, and then you can go into English Premier League soccer. Okay, so you see how those steps happen there. So you can first talk about sports, and then soccer. You find out what you want to talk about with sports, and then soccer, and then you find out what you want to talk about with soccer, and that is just focusing on English Premier League, which is niching down so specific. So now your potential audience knows exactly what you're going to be talking about, which is great. And you can target people either with ads or different campaigns to find out where English Premier League soccer fans are hanging out, and where you can share your podcast to, which is excellent. And then talking about the other one, which is technology. So niching down from technology would be, there's technology, And then we can talk about, say, computers. So we have computers. So we have technology, then computers. You're going to do a podcast about computers. Great, excellent. But you know what? Computers are a huge field, so you might need to niche down further than that. So you have technology, then computers, and then you can do Apple computers. So that's niching down even further. So now you can target people that are interested in Apple computer products, which is excellent, and you're going to have more people try to reach out and listen to you, and you can become that expert in that field of Apple computer products. So then people, if they're looking for Apple computer products or are interested in it, then they can just go towards you, and you can have a whole bunch of different videos already set up in that. Sorry, my video just kind of interrupted there. So that was number 2 on the niche scale. So finding out your niche. So first one is to talk about what you are interested in. The second one is to, once you know what you're interested in, is to niche down. And the third thing that I'm going to talk about with your niche is to either make it a talk show or a music focused show. Now both of these have their positive and negatives, which I'm going to go into. So if you just want to do a talk show, for example, a talk show which is absolutely excellent. That's kind of what I'm doing right now. So you can pretty much just like talk about different things and whatever aspects are. So let's go back to the English Premier League soccer example. You can talk about things and have your big routine of a normal radio talk show, podcast talk show, where you go through different steps and different things that you want to talk about. And a really good thing to get your podcast shared and to get as much reach as possible is to do interviews with your talk show. So you can have on different guests, or you can have a pre-recording of a different interview that you did within those people in your niche. So if you're doing English Premier League soccer, you don't want to interview one of the Apple geniuses at the Apple store, because their audience reach is not going to be the same as that English Premier League soccer reach. So you're going to get their audience to listen into it, but they might not be interested in English Premier League soccer. So you have to make sure that your interview is with someone that is within that niche. Now, one of the downsides of this is that you have to like organize interviews, which could be a very timely. Getting in contact with some of these people, sometimes they don't respond back, sometimes they're really busy, so you just have to make do with what you can with trying to get interviews. But that's one of the best ways in order to spread your message and get people to listen to your podcast, is to interview people that have already an established audience. But that's one of the positives of having a talk show. One of the downsides is, of course, just trying to get a hold of some of these people who might be very popular. And then there's the music aspect. So I had my own music podcast a couple months ago, the Block E podcast, and I focused a lot of it on music videos and music content. And how I went about that was contacting different artists on SoundCloud who had under 25,000 followers. And what that allowed me to do was allow that one-on-one interaction with those artists, so that I can get permission to use their content, and I can have discussions with those artists if they want to come on for interviews or different things on that sort, and that I can share their music. Now, one of the positives of doing this and making a music podcast, or having music on your podcast mixed in with talk, is that the artists of whose music that you share, they might also be sharing your podcast as well. You can message them and be like, hey, I added your music inside of my podcast. Do you mind checking it out, or do you mind sharing it with your followers? That'd be greatly appreciated. And a lot of them are super happy that you already like their music, and you've reached out to them to share their music on your show and to share it with your own audience. So they're already very ecstatic about it, and they just want to make a name for themselves as well, and they want their content to be as far out and spread out as much as possible. So that's another way how you can share your podcast a lot more rapidly, is that you can share your podcast with artists, with different artists that you come in contact with, because then they're going to be exposed maybe to other audiences of artists that you already have on your podcast too. But one of the downsides with having music on your podcast, especially if you're going to have like video and it's going to be on YouTube, is copyright. You can get permission from an artist to use their music, but their music might get blocked either on YouTube or a different medium platform that you're going to be releasing your podcast on, because their music might be copyrighted to their label. And it's nothing that the artist can do. It's not really anything that you can do. You might have to do a few extra steps in order to get the music like monetized, if you want to monetize it on your channel, or it might just end up having to to get the music monetized by the artists themselves, which is fine. Like I think it's fine, and you shouldn't be making money through like monetizing things on YouTube anyway, since they don't really pay that much. You should be going a different route, which I will be discussing in a future video on how to monetize your podcast. But that's one of the headaches that you might get into with having music on your podcast, is that a lot of it's already copyrighted, and YouTube's gonna be like, no, don't do that. So so one of the positives is to get your podcast shared by that artist, and go and reach out to their audience as well, because they can share it on different social media platforms. And then one of the downsides is, of course, that copyright issue, where you might not be able to get that monetization for your podcast. So let's review those 3 things right now, and 3 things about finding your niche. Why was my hand up here? 3 things about finding your niche. The importance of finding your niche with your podcast. And the first step is talking about what you're interested in. Very, very important. The second one is to niche down from that interest. And then the third thing is to decide whether or not you want to do talk or have music on your podcast. Maybe even have both on there. Then you get the best of both worlds. So thank you for checking out this second part of a 7-part series, or second video in a 7-part series. Please remember to hit that subscribe button, and we're going to be moving on to the next module, which will be software. So please stay tuned for that, and I'm out.